The night was calm in Amsterdam. Stars twinkled above the tall, skinny houses that lined the Keizersgracht Canal. The water was like a sheet of dark glass, reflecting the golden lights from the windows. My name is Leo, and I was visiting my Oma for the summer. Her house was one of those old ones, leaning just a little bit to the side, as if it were telling a secret to its neighbor. I loved looking out my window at the canal. The soft lapping of the water against the stone walls was usually a peaceful sound. It helped me fall asleep most nights, a gentle lullaby from the city itself. But not tonight. Something felt different. The air was a little colder than usual for an August evening. I pressed my face against the cool glass of my bedroom window. Below, a single empty tourboat drifted slowly, tied to a post. No one was out. The streets were silent, which was strange for Amsterdam, even late at night. Usually, you could hear the distant chime of a bicycle bell or the faint laughter from a faraway cafe. Tonight, there was only a deep, heavy quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes you feel like you're the only person left in the world. I shivered, even though I was wearing my favorite warm pajama top. I tried to tell myself it was just a quiet night, nothing more. But a weird feeling, like a spider crawling up my spine, wouldn't go away. Oma was already asleep. I could hear her soft snoring from her room down the hall. I was all alone with my thoughts and the silent view. I decided a glass of water might help calm my nerves. Tiptoeing out of my room, I made my way to the kitchen. The old wooden floorboards creaked under my feet, each sound seeming to echo loudly in the stillness of the house. I poured a glass of water, my hand trembling just a little. Why was I so spooked? It was just a quiet night. Just a normal, peaceful, quiet night. At least that's what I kept telling myself over and over again. But the feeling of being watched just wouldn't leave me alone. I went back to my room, clutching the glass of water. I took a big gulp and sat on the edge of my bed, staring back out at the canal. The moon was a bright sliver in the sky, casting long, spooky shadows that danced on the water's surface. Everything looked normal. A row of bicycles chained to a railing, a few flower pots on a houseboat, the dark, still water. But the longer I stared, the more the canal seemed to be staring back at me. It was like a giant dark eye, waiting for something to happen. Waiting for me. And I had the terrible feeling that I was about to find out what it was waiting for. That's when I heard it for the first time. It was a sound so faint, I thought I had imagined it. A soft, gurgling whisper. It seemed to come from right outside my window, from the canal itself. I froze, my heart starting to pound against my ribs like a drum. I leaned closer to the glass, straining my ears to listen. There it was again, a little louder this time. Gurgle, gurgle, help, me! The words were watery and choked, as if someone was trying to speak from underwater. My breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be real. It had to be the wind or the water playing tricks on my ears. It had to be. I scanned the canal, my eyes darting from one dark shadow to the next. I saw nothing. No person, no boat, just the dark glassy water. But the sound came again, and this time there was no mistaking it. It was a voice. A sad, lonely voice that sounded like it was bubbling up from the very bottom of the canal. So cold, it whispered. Goosebumps erupted all over my arms. My cozy bedroom suddenly felt like an icebox. Who could be out there? And how could they be speaking from under the water? My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some kids were hiding with a speaker, but the sound was too real, too wet. I wanted to run to Oma's room and wake her up. I wanted to hide under my covers and pretend I hadn't heard anything at all. But I was glued to the spot, my eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a strange curiosity. The whisper came again, closer now. It sounded like it was right beneath my window. Gurgle, lost. The voice was thin and reedy, like the sound of wind whistling through a cracked pipe, but filled with a deep, chilling sadness. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt a weird pull, an urge to open the window to see what was making that terrible pleading sound. It was a very, very bad idea. I knew it was a bad idea, but my hand moved on its own. It seemed to float up towards the window latch. My fingers felt numb as they fumbled with the old metal handle. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, to back away, to leave it alone. But the whispering voice held me captive. Help me! It gurgled, a desperate, watery plea. With a loud creak that echoed in the silent room, the window swung open. A gust of cold, damp air rushed in, smelling of mud and old, wet stone, the smell of the canal. I leaned out, my body trembling, and peered down into the inky blackness below. The whispering stopped. All was silent again, except for the frantic beat of my own heart. For a moment there was nothing, just the silent water gleaming under the pale moonlight. I started to think maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe the late hour and the strange quiet had finally gotten to me. I let out a shaky breath, feeling a little foolish. I was about to pull my head back inside and lock the window for good when I saw it. A ripple. It started in the center of the canal, directly below my window. It was a single, perfect circle, spreading outwards on the otherwise still surface. Then another one appeared, and another. Something was down there, just under the surface, disturbing the water. My eyes were locked on the ripples. They grew larger and more frequent, churning the dark water. Then a shadow began to form. It was a long, thin shape, darker than the water around it. It slowly rose from the depths, getting clearer and more defined with every inch. It wasn't a log or a piece of trash. It was slender and pale, almost ghostly white. It looked like an arm. A long, skinny arm with bony fingers that were reaching up towards the surface. My blood ran cold. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even breathe. I could only watch in frozen horror as this thing emerged from the canal. The arm broke the surface of the water without a sound. Water streamed off it in silvery threads under the moonlight. The fingers were long and unnaturally thin, with nails that were dark and jagged. They twitched, curling and uncurling as if trying to grab onto the air itself. Then another pale shape began to rise next to it. Another arm. Both arms were now out of the water, swaying gently in the night air. They looked weak and fragile, but there was something horribly strong about them too. They weren't floating. They were attached to something much bigger, something still hidden in the murky depths of the canal. I stumbled back from the window, my legs feeling like jelly. I bumped into my desk, sending a stack of books crashing to the floor. The noise was deafening in the silent house. My heart leaped into my throat. I clapped my hands over my mouth, hoping the creature hadn't heard. I peeked over the windowsill again, my curiosity getting the better of my terror. The arms were still there, but they had stopped moving. They were pointing straight up, pointing directly at my window, pointing directly at me, and then a head started to emerge from the water between the two pale arms. Slowly, so slowly, the head rose from the canal. It was covered in dark, slimy weeds that draped over it like wet hair. Water poured from it in little streams, running down a face that was ghostly white and puffy. Its cheeks were bloated, and its skin looked soft and waterlogged, like paper that had been left in the rain for too long. But the worst part was its eyes. They were wide open. Two dark, empty circles that seemed to have no pupils. They stared right at me, right into me, with a blank, hollow expression. Its mouth was a dark O, open as if it were in a permanent silent scream. This was the thing that had been whispering. This was the creature from the canal. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a monster. It looked like a girl who had been in the water for a very, very long time. Her pale arms began to move again, reaching towards the stone wall of the canal bank. Her long, bony fingers scraped against the stone, making a terrible scratching sound that sent shivers all the way down to my toes. She was trying to pull herself out. She was trying to climb out of the canal, and she was still staring right at me with those empty, terrifying eyes. I finally found my voice. I let out a scream, a loud, terrified shriek that tore through the quiet night. I scrambled away from the window and ran out of my room, not daring to look back. I flew down the hallway and burst into Oma's room, flipping on the light. Oma! Oma, wake up! I yelled, shaking her shoulder. She sat up, blinking in the sudden brightness. Leo? What is it? What's wrong? She asked, her voice thick with sleep. There's a girl. In the canal. She's climbing out. I sobbed, pointing frantically towards my room. Oma sighed and put on her glasses, looking at me with a calm, patient expression. She took my hand. Leo, you had a bad dream, she said softly. There is no girl in the canal. But I knew what I saw. No, it was real. You have to believe me, I insisted. She led me back to my room and walked straight to the window, looking out. See, she said, her voice gentle. There is nothing there, just the water. I crept forward and peeked out. She was right. The canal was perfectly still again. There were no ripples, no arms, no face, nothing. But as Oma turned from the window, the light from the hallway caught her reflection in the glass, and for a split second, I saw it. Floating in the reflection, right behind her, was the pale, wet face of the canal girl, her dark eyes staring right at me, and she was smiling.